everyone, welcome to my channel Funke Christian, where I talk about everyday life in Christ. This video is actually part of a series of videos that looks at everything you need to know and understand about becoming a born-again Christian. So in part one of the video, I talk about how sin came into the world and how that affects all of us. In part two, I talk about the solution to sin and how that affects all of us. And in part three, I explain what born again actually means. In part four, I go through the steps that you can take to become a born again Christian. And in part five, I talk about the next steps after you have become a born again Christian. Now, these videos are like simple to understand and they're step by step. You can watch them as part of a series or you can watch them as a standalone on their own. There is actually a longer version where all the videos are put together, so you can also watch that as well. I really hope that you find these videos useful. Please subscribe to my channel to watch more videos and watch more content. Please leave a comment. If you have any questions or any thoughts or any comments to make, please leave a comment. And like if you liked. Okay, thanks a lot. I really hope you find it useful. Take care and speak soon. So how did we end up with a sin problem? I'm now going to talk about how sin came into the world. And everything I'm going to talk about now, you will find in the book of Genesis. Now, Genesis is the first book in the Bible, and it talks about how God created the world and everything in it. And it starts in the beginning. So in the beginning, God created the earth. He created land and sea. He created the sun, the moon, and the stars. He created plants. He created animals. And he created the first man, Adam, and the first woman, Eve. Now, God put together the Garden of Eden, and he put Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Now, the Garden of Eden was paradise. And God put Adam and Eve there because he loved them. He wanted to delight them with this beautiful paradise that he'd put together for them. He wanted to spend time with them. And the Bible tells us that God would go down and fellowship with them and they would talk together. So God created them to just love them and spend time with them and make them happy. Now, the Bible also tells us that the Garden of Eden, it didn't rain there. All the plants were watered by mist that was rising up from the ground. So that tells me that the weather was perfect. In fact, Adam and Eve were naked, so that means they were never too hot or too cold. God had taken care of everything. Also, the animals in the Garden of Eden, none of the animals then ate each other, and they didn't eat the human beings, and the human beings didn't eat the animals. Animals and human being alike, they ate fruits and plants. So it was a real paradise. Now, God said to Adam and Eve, you can eat any plant and any fruit in this garden, but don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, God said that to them the way parents say to their children, don't do this. We say it for their own good. Sometimes we can't explain why they shouldn't do it, but we're doing it for their own good. And that was the same way God said to them, don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It was for their own good. But then Adam and Eve were tempted by Satan in the form of a serpent. Now, Satan used to be an angel, and his name was Lucifer. And Lucifer means morning star or brightness. So he was a beautiful angel. But he was so full of pride, he thought he could be God. And he was banished from heaven. He was then known as Satan, and here he was in the Garden of Eden in the form of a serpent. And he lied to Adam and Eve. He said to them, the reason why God doesn't want you to eat from this tree is because he's trying to withhold something good from you. Adam and Eve believed him, and so they ate from the tree. First Eve, and then Adam. Now, when Adam ate from that tree, as soon as he did that, sin came into the world. Because sin, by its very definition, is disobeying God's laws or God's ordinances. So Adam disobeyed God's instructions not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And because he disobeyed, sin came into the world. With sin came death, because Adam died spiritually when he sinned. He was separated from God. So the Bible talks about 3 types of death. And I'm going to talk about 2 of them because this is what happened when Adam sinned, when he disobeyed God. There was spiritual death, which was instant. And the spiritual death led to a separation from God. So Adam became separated from God. And then there was physical death. And physical death is what happens when we hopefully, at the end of a long life, die. Our bodies get left behind in the grave and our spirits go to heaven or hell. But the physical death was gradual. It wasn't instant. In the book of Genesis, we see a lot of the people then living until they were about 800 years old, 900 years old. But today, average life expectancy is in the 70s. So you can see that the physical death has manifested itself in that our lifespan is getting shorter and shorter. But the spiritual death, where Adam was separated from God, was instant. In fact, Adam and Eve hid from God. So when he came down to the Garden of Eden later that day, he couldn't find them. And he called out to them. And they came out and he said to them, "Where have you been?" And they said, "Well, we hid from you." And as soon as they said that, God knew they had sinned because they were now separated from him. So because of that, Adam and Eve had to leave the Garden of Eden. But even as they were leaving the Garden of Eden, God had a solution. Now, the thing with the sin, with what happened when Adam ate from that tree, it didn't just impact him. It didn't just affect him. It affected all of us. Because Adam is our father. Everybody that has ever lived is descended from Adam. And so that sin problem, or that sin nature, as some people refer to it, the same way that sort of genetic traits get passed down from generation to generation, that sin nature in Adam gets passed down to all of us. And so the truth is, the impact of what he did is that we are all born sinners. We are all separated from God when we are born because our father, Adam, sinned and he was a sinner.